Thanks very much, Helen, and thanks to Jasleen and Diana from Fife Contemporary for inviting panel to speak as part of today's symposium. Lucy McKecken's not here today because she's out of the country, so unfortunately she can't join us, but I will try to represent what we do as best I can as a onesome, although we are usually very well known as a duo. So, as Helen mentioned, panel's an independent curatorial practice, and we're based in Glasgow. We've been operating there since 2010. Previous to that, Lucy and I actually worked together in an institution called the Lighthouse, which was Scotland's Centre for Architecture and Design, and we both worked in the programming team there for about, well, I worked there for 8 years and Lucy worked there for 9 years. So that was really our kind of training, and we left at the same time and sort of saw a space for something independent that was focused on design in Scotland, particularly because at that time, Creative Scotland, the national funding body, had just kind of started thinking about supporting design in quite a direct way, which was a brand new thing. Previous to that. Craft and visual art had been kind of seen as very separate sectors, and design and architecture weren't considered at all. So we commission makers, designers and artists to make new work that's grounded in research, and often working in collaboration with local manufacturing industry in batch runs. And we mine local collections and archives to explore connections to our social history, but also to propose alternative ways of looking at our current situation through cultural production that's inspired by such research. We don't have a gallery or a venue. We work in partnership with venues and institutions across Scotland and also beyond, and for us that's a way of extending who our audience can be, but also it's a way of pooling skills and ideas and resources, and that's something that really appeals to us. So in thinking about today's symposium, I was really thinking about our work and how it moves between curating, producing, publishing and exhibiting contemporary design. But I didn't want to, much like Jasleen's work, I didn't want to look at it purely as a discipline, so purely through the lens of exhibition making, but rather I wanted to sort of drill down and look at one of our outcomes in one particular form. We kind of hope that what we do is conceptually ambitious and that it frames design not as an isolated outpost or as a siloed activity, but something that's part of a much broader social, cultural and political landscape. And so I thought a way of looking at our practice in quite a broad way, but also quite a focused way, would be to look at one particular thing, and that would be our print production. And its importance, I suppose, in articulating and expressing ideas about our material culture quite generally. Also its importance in communicating design and craft to broad audiences, particularly those that might have a preconceived perception of what the position of design and craft is culturally. And also to look quite closely at how print production can be used as a tool across disciplines, so by makers, designers and visual artists, and how that bridge can be quite useful in thinking about design and craft within exhibition making. So I've got a kind of script here which I think I'll stick to just so that I can keep to time. I'll just work this out. Oh, there we go, sorry. So examples of panels print, and why do we think this is important? Well, this is just a pile of some of our printed ephemera that we collected together to have photographed. And I suppose rather than thinking about individual programmes, we actually view panels, posters, invitations and other printed matter together as a collection of work in its own right. When read together, the individual pieces layer ideas and moments that at once define a strand of our own work and exemplify a small cultural ecology that we've supported since 2010. And importantly for us, our print has been designed through collaboration rather than to brief. And together, the works in our collection establish for us a tone of voice that communicates what we do and who we work with far more effectively than sort of other forms of documentation or evaluation that we've used in our practice. So printed posters and invitations, why do they occupy this position for us? Well, for audiences, they're often the introduction to a new work or a new exhibition. This is an installation of an exhibition that we did in 2015 called The Inventors of Tradition 2. And the poster that advertised it was positioned on the door as you walked in. Posters provide only glimpses. They reveal the first few lines of a particular narrative. The quality and character of how an exhibition or an event is communicated to the world begins not with a private view or a launch event, but with these printed cards and posters. They create a permanent pathway and a legacy into what's often a temporary environment. And often, these ephemeral papers endure to become material evidence, remnants that not only commemorate but become artworks in their own right. They are mementos, leftovers that recall not only a body of work, but also make connections back to the hands that they passed through, the notice boards that they might have been pinned to and the walls that they decorated, through postmarks, stamps, folds and tears. And this is the detail of an exhibition that we presented with a typographer called Edwin Pickstone, where part of his studio was reassembled within a gallery space, including a wall of print tests and posters. A letterpress was also installed, and Edwin made one poster a day during the exhibition's 4-day run, which were for sale direct from the gallery. So much like a souvenir postcard or a handwritten letter, posters and invites exemplify the fundamental importance of physical material culture to us all in collecting and keeping and in connecting our ideas and our desires to particular times, places and objects. And crucially for panel, the enduring importance of the printed exhibition poster or invitation is in a bridging of design and visual art and the historic structures through which visual art operates, that is exhibitions and galleries and their outward-facing public function. So this sort of cultural context for design. And this is really where our concern lies in the creation of public frameworks to extend and expand upon the ideas that craft and design works can contain. And so this is the first invitation that we produced in 2011, which was hand-printed using a Lubbock printing press. And it's an image that's been printed in 4 different layers, and it represents a film still from a film about the Templeton Carpet Factory. And I suppose its subject and its process and production concisely introduces our programme and our approach. And I'll just quickly run through a few of our projects just now. So this project was called Scotland Can Make It, which we presented as part of the 20th Commonwealth Games in Glasgow in 2014. And its premise was to develop a series of souvenirs that had been designed and manufactured entirely in Scotland to be sold as part of the cultural programme during the Games run that summer. So we worked with 6 different designers and artists and 6 different manufacturing companies to create a series of products that exemplified something about Scottish identity for each of those designers at that time. And it was presented through quite a wide-reaching public programme. And the project itself really, for us, explored the limitations and the possibilities of manufacture and production in Scotland. And this slide just shows one of the designers, Katie West, who's a ceramicist, working in collaboration with Highland Stoneware in Sutherland to make a jelly mould, a kind of celebratory kitchenware piece, and the resulting jellies that were a result of her project. Another project in 2012 with the Dovecot Tapestry Studios called Carpets of Distinction, and that brought together the archive work of the archive of Templeton Carpet Factory, held at Glasgow University, with the handcraft skill of the Dovecot Tapestry Studio, and particularly Jonathan Cleaver, their master weaver. And we invited 6 artists to work with the archive and to then work with Dovecot to create 6 rugs inspired by both areas of that research. And so we worked with Nicholas Party, John Byrne, Alistair Gray, Ruth Ewan, Tom O'Sullivan and Joanne Tatham, and Nick Evans to produce those rugs, and presented them within a showroom scheme that was reminiscent of the carpet factory sales in its height during the early years of the 20th century. We've also looked through our programme at the importance of film to our design heritage and the now faltering industries that it once supported. And this was an exhibition that we presented at Tramway in Glasgow, which is a multi-arts space. And we invited an artist, a craft maker, a musician and a writer to all work within film, and working alongside and looking at material from the British Film Institute archive. They made a series of films which were a response to some propaganda films that were shown only in South and Southeast Asia, which highlighted the strength and industrial might of Britain during the 20th century to encourage people to come and live here, and also to encourage business to do business with us in Scotland. So we were kind of looking at I suppose, the politics of propaganda around design and making. So these projects are all united in that the way our communication, our research, and our ideas have been translated into exhibitions intends to position design as an activity which can be both challenging and critical, and absolutely central to the content of the work, be it a filmed work, a hand-tufted rug, a fashion collection, which I'll talk about in a moment, or a ceramic jelly mould, in addition to being, or indeed instead of being, a straightforward application of skills set to a brief. So at the heart of this talk, that's really what I'd like to discuss with two particular projects, both collaborations between designers and visual artists, and both using the significance of print and its divergent functions as focus. So this is the first project, which is called The Inventors of Tradition 2, and it was a collaborative partnership between a fashion and art collective called Atelier EB, which is Lucy Mackenzie, who's a visual artist, and Becca Lipscomb, who's a fashion designer. And through Atelier EB, they create fashion collections that are advertised and sold through fine art galleries across the world. And they work with panel intermittently to create public programmes that extend the ideas and provocations that their clothing and accessories contain. So our first project in 2011 mapped out connections across design, industry, fashion, and fine art, and covering linked aspects of Scotland's unique heritage in textile making. And that was our first collaboration with Atelier EB. And with our second, which we presented in 2015, we expanded our exploration to encompass Scotland's recent cultural past, making new connections that brought together art, architecture, design, and subcultural identities to examine how style can function as part of a broader discourse. And within this installation, we explored subjects such as casual gang culture and its links to street fashion, the artist's Scottish house, the phenomenon of Macintosh, which is a kind of shoot-off of the style and architecture of Macintosh, and the instrumentalisation of Scottish style as appropriated by council and government bodies. So we explored these through this exhibition, which took place at a venue called the Palace of Art, which is actually a functioning gym, and an events programme which took place at Glasgow School of Art and the Glasgow Film Theatre. So we hope to, through this project, to open up historic material to audiences in new ways, working with Michael Clark Company, as we did with this image here. We were particularly concerned with the archive of performance through active recreation, and looked at the potential of investing archive works such as this dance piece called Oh Yes, which looks at a very local subject, which was the tension between Rangers and Celtic football teams and the religious history behind that. We were interested in investing them with something new within the context of our project and within this particular time. So for this project, we invited a graphic design studio called HIT, who, when we first worked with them, are based in London but are now based in Berlin, to create a printed invitation card and poster series for the project. Their brief was specific: to create a visual identity for us that could blend in with, rather than stand out from, our other local advertisements, city council communications, and printed matter designed for mass dissemination. And this is an example of what they produced. We required publicity for the project that would disrupt conventional exhibition and fashion promotion by deliberately aligning itself with other events, local ubiquitous club nights, and often things that sat outside of the cultural sphere. And this is in the Glasgow Underground. It was important for us that the posters, though obscuring the actual content of the exhibition, which was about fashion as experienced through the lens of local subculture, was circulated and distributed beyond the intended audience. They were pasted up around the city, stuck to walls, left around town, sent to friends and colleagues in the post, and their design was disposable, cheap, and basic in its paper printing and format. And with such a poster campaign, our interrogation of style could then extend beyond the walls of the gallery and across the city to explore, beyond the content of the exhibition, how ideas of style are manipulated by corporations, advertisers, local promoters, and others engaging in DIY activity. But in so doing, The posters worked less efficiently at fulfilling their intended function of clear communication about the nature of our exhibition and events programme. In fact, we kind of hope they work beyond their function to become self-reflexive, a graphic illustration, not only of the event's details, but of the very idea of communication, of transmission of information and its distribution. And we hope that they became autonomous works in their own right. So just to kind of finish off on this project, a publication followed which brought together all of the material within the exhibitions and the events. And it launched in November last year, and its design ignored the poster campaign completely. And it's really a hybrid between an artist's book, a subjective social history textbook, and a fashion and design magazine. And this has sort of underscored our approach working with HIT, making it impossible to pigeonhole the project through graphic design and print. And the next project I'd like to quickly discuss is called The Persistence of Type, which was an exhibition that took place at Tramway in 2015 and used graphic design, installation and PowerPoint animation to consider connections between type as a font, type as a fixed persona, and the pseudo-personalisation of women as types in historical advertising in 20th century Scotland. And the project was a collaboration between Fiona Jardine, who's an artist, and graphic designers Maeve Redmond and Sophie Dyer. Works in the exhibition combined large billboard pieces, so these are the same size as individual billboard posters that are pasted up, and they were oversized facsimiles, screen-printed fragments with markup text added. In direct reference to the project's research, these new works nodded to graphic design processes of the past through a physical layering of composition, texture, type, and image. And through this newly commissioned work, deconstructing and representing campaigns for British Caledonia Airways and Tennant's Lager Lovelace, work undertaken by Scotland's newly developed graphic design industry during the mid-20th century, a new narrative emerged for our exhibition which utilised design as a tool for critical thinking around the subject of gender in advertising. Ideas presented within the exhibition, such as this one, were also taken out of the gallery and extended into Glasgow city centre through a billboard campaign. More explicitly drawing focus to the poster as the oldest and still one of the most persuasive forms of graphic communication, the work intended to both advertise the exhibition at Tramway and also provide a new location and context for the provocations it contained. Its function was twofold: an announcement to the exhibition and an extension of the exhibition beyond the walls of the gallery. Most crucially though, The Persistence of Type also functioned to produce 2 volumes of a free broadsheet newspaper that was widely distributed. The first volume as part of the exhibition within Tramway, and then the second as a follow-on as a part of last year's Glasgow International Festival of Art. So the newspaper served to develop a platform for critical and creative writing around design, grounded within the exhibition's research, to advocate for the work, challenge it, and to contribute to its overall impact and ambition, as well as helping to archive it within a designed format that will arguably outlast newer technologies. For Panel, this project represents a collaborative partnership between graphic designers and a visual artist by taking an approach to printed matter that's cultural in its position and both influenced by and a reaction to the complex relations between digital technologies and print. Within the project, hand screen printing, high volume, low cost digital newspaper print and PowerPoint were all used in the creation of connecting new work. And these are the papers just ready for distribution in Mono, which is a very well-frequented pub and cafe in Glasgow. And I was just kind of thinking about Jasline's work, and much like Jasline's assemblages and process-led work, with The Persistence of Type, using the exhibition, the advertising billboard and the free newspaper as format, we position communication design as broader and more inquiring than simply serving the process of promotion and consumption that can be associated with design. While commerce underpins design as a creative industry, it is made clear within this project that there are other areas of contemporary life to which everyday design ephemera and objects make vital contributions, such as the local history of gender politics as explored here. We're really interested in objects such as these as being agents for inquiry and change, projects which consider design through the lens of particular social and cultural histories, examining questions of identity and authorship. And these particular objects, taking their form as printed papers, are reworkings which encompass tradition and a truth to their material form. They are physical, designed to be kept, collected, archived, reread, and eventually recontextualised. Working as critical tools, they draw attention to the power of design and craft to transform material culture into matter and meaning, and communicate for us important ideas about space for collaboration, commissioning, critical writing and exhibition making for design and craft. And I'll just finish there by saying that's something that we're really interested in developing as we move forward with our new projects, and particularly excited about working with Jasleen and the Glasgow Women's Library on a project which explores design in a similar kind of framework. So, thank you.